And to introduce myself really quick, my name is Mark McCall. I am your facilitator for today. I'll have the judges introduce themselves in just a moment, and then the students will. Just as a reminder, please mute yourself if you are not talking. The teacher has given permission for this to be recorded. As we go through on your timings, remember you have 4 minutes for your prepared statement and then 8 minutes of questions by the judges. The judges will provide some feedback after the 8 minutes of questions is complete. Just so you know on timing, since we have the screens there and it might be hard to see a timing screen, I'm going to give you a background change. So when we get to 1 minute left, you go to green. And when time is up, we'll go to yellow. And I'll also try to put that message in the chat box too, so you can see timing is up. Okay. Can everybody see those color changes?
Yep.
Cool. All right. And with that, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to our judges.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Candida Steele, and I'm retired as a judge on the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. And Rebecca, would you introduce yourself?
My name is Rebecca Tinder. I'm a retired attorney from Charleston, West Virginia, and the West Virginia We the People coordinator.
And good morning. My name's Lindsay Draper. I'm retired from the juvenile court bench here in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. And I'm excited to hear you.
Great. And kids, would you tell us who you are?
I am Jocelyn Vereen. I'm Kaylee Rogers.
I'm Sammy Lang.
Oh, you're muted, sweetie.
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Mark?
Can you unmute yourself, Peyton?
She did. Yeah, keep talking, Peyton, until we fix your sound. Now talk.
Nope,
Nope.
Still can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I think she's going to share with someone.
I'll sit here just trying to compute.
Peyton Downey will be sharing a computer with us.
Okay. Great, thank you. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Ms. Dowdy.
And I'm Peyton Downey.
Yeah, right.
Hi, welcome.
Hear you.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and read the question quickly so it's on the record. When a choice must be, quote, when a choice must be made, it is better to allow those who preach racial hate rather than to be panicked into embarking on the dangerous course of permitting the government to decide what its citizens may say and hear. Do you agree or disagree with Judge Bernard Decker's upholding the right of Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois? Why? What limits has the U.S. Supreme Court placed on freedom of expression? What benefit, if any, is there from the presentation of ideas that are designed to alarm, antagonize, and offend members of society? And what limits on freedom of expression, if any, should be placed on social media sites? You may begin.
Yes, we agree with Judge Bernard Decker's upholding the rights of Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois. As George Washington explains, if the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution says that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. This idea in our nation's history can be traced back from the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions to recent cases such as Snyder versus Phelps in 2010. In Brandenburg versus Ohio, limitations were placed on speech where such advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. The First Amendment prevents majorities from silencing views with which they do not agree, even views that the majority of people find offensive to their very core. American writer Noam Chomsky said, "If we do not believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we do not believe in it at all." Furthermore, in our home state of South Carolina, our legislators in 2015, in an act of intolerance, passed a law to remove the Southern flag from the Capitol building and would go on to remove historical Confederate statues such as John C. Calhoun. Over the past 200 years, the definition of freedom of speech has evolved and been refined by the courts. In 1973, the United States Supreme Court in Miller v. California created a three-part test for legal definition of obscenity. Child pornography is banned speech even when it does not meet the Miller test. Furthermore, in Cohen v. California, the court further clarified its position on threatening or violent speech. The Cohen court held that a t-shirt containing an expletive was protected by the First Amendment because it was not directed at any one person. It cannot reasonably be expected to lead to a breach of the peace. It is the same doctrine that prohibits overt threats of bodily harm, swatting, or yelling fire in a crowded theater. Falsely yelling fire in a crowded building and swatting are pranks that can lead to people being injured or killed.
But there are benefits of presenting ideas designed to alarm, antagonize, and offend members of the society. As John Stuart Mill writes in his book On Liberty, the free exchange of ideas should be encouraged to promote the discovery of the truth and enhance the cognitive faculties of individuals. Benefits from the presentations of these ideas are to promote individual growth, human dignity, and the advancement of knowledge. These ideas are also a necessary part of representative government and bring about peaceful social change, as well as protecting all individual rights.
Great. Are you done?
Protects individuals from government censorship. Social media platforms are private companies, and they can censor what people post as they see fit. There should be limits placed on freedom of expression within social media sites. The First Amendment protects hate speech from government censorship unless that speech incites or is likely to incite imminent lawless action. False information is also often still allowed on social media sites. For example, former President Donald J. Trump was banned from Twitter for not following their limits on expression. As Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey concludes, due to the ongoing tensions in the United States and the uptick in the global conversation in regards to the people who violently stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, including to incite violence, as well as in some content that hate speech infringes on the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection under law. Alexander Thesis, for example, wrote in a 2009 article that hate speech is a threatening form of communication and is very contrary to the democratic principles. The Supreme Court turned their eyes toward social media to determine whether speech online could constitute a threat, and alone to speak United States. The case involved an individual that posted rap lyrics on his Facebook page in which he threatened to kill his ex-wife. He was charged for conveying threats across state lines. With social media and the internet increasingly leading into real-world acts of violence, and as a recruiting tool for terrorists, the law will be modified to address the changing of times.
Great. That's a lovely presentation. If we could look at a slightly different question than you've raised, when you were talking about limits on speech, what kind of limits do you think there should be on students' free expression? And do you think that should be connected to the ages of students? Or
I believe students have a right to speak in schools no matter what. Under Tinker v. Des Moines, it's concluded that students do not lose their constitutional rights of freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate unless it disrupts the educational process. So there shouldn't be limits to what they say in school unless it disrupts this educational process and disrupts the classroom.
I agree with my partner, but I also believe that speech should be censored if it is likely to incite violence. For instance, in the case of Ginsburg v. New York, they ruled that the state of New York could not limit their children as they do adults, and it should be based on what adults think that their children should do. However, it was also ruled in the court case of Abrams v. U.S. that speech cannot be punished unless it is viewed as a clear present danger of imminent action.
I agree with my partners. And another way that we could limit speech is by the precedent in the case Schenck v. United States, where the court ruled that speech during wartime can be limited.
All right. You mentioned in your prepared remarks that one of the benefits of freedom of speech is discovering the truth. Should untruths or false statements be protected by the First Amendment?
Well, it was believed by John Stuart Mill that everybody should be able to produce their ideas in society's marketplace of ideas. And it was also believed in the natural rights philosophy of John Locke that everybody should be able to practice their own self-interest as long as it does not infringe on the rights of others.
But does that include propounding what is known to be false information? Should that be protected if it's absolutely false?
Well, social media companies, if there's false information being placed on their sites, they could install AI systems to fact check false or misleading information, and people themselves could also fact check this information.
So during the course of your prepared statement, and I may have missed the point you were trying to make, you talked about the South Carolina legislature and passing legislation on the removal of Confederate statues. Can you explain to me again what that had to do with freedom of speech? Did you understand my question?
May you please restate the question?
In your prepared statement, you talked about the removal of Confederate statues and the South Carolina legislature passing legislation regarding it. Can you tell me what that had to do with this question?
Well, I believe that the viewing of offensive content should be taken down and placed in a museum. And during the March of Skokie, it was believed that the Nazi soldiers should not have the right to express their ideas due to many of the citizens of Chicago being refugees from World War II.
To add on to my partner said, I believe these monuments should be kept in a museum as a reminder that a wrongdoing has been done in America. In Taiwan, they removed over 200 statues of the former president and moved them near his tomb.
Okay, so you are equating the viewing or somebody having to see the statue as being the same as speech.
Yes, because if the government is putting these statues up on a pedestal, then it's kind of the government's way of speech of communicating their ideas with us. So we believe that these ideas and these Confederate monuments should be placed in a museum. So they're not necessarily the ideals of our government, but rather memories from a bygone era.
Okay, thank you. You need to unmute.
Could you expand a little bit? You did a good job in your opening, but if you could expand a little on your definition of hate speech.
I believe there's one person that can define where the line should be drawn. I believe people need to change rather than the laws on speech. Something that's hateful to me may not be hateful to you.
To go off of what my partner said, as said before, in the court case of Abrams v. U.S., it was ruled that speech cannot be punished unless it is likely to incite, unless it is a clear idea of present danger. So I believe that hate speech is drawn at the line of where it could possibly incite violence.
To add on to what my partner said, policing of speech based on subjective judgment would lead to tyranny. In New Zealand, they're trying to pass a law to criminalize hate speech, but they don't have laws on free speech. We have laws on free speech. So the criminalization of hate speech would infringe on our First Amendment rights.
Madison and Federalist 51 believed that if men were angels, then there would be no laws.
I agree with my partners on this, that any speech that could directly incite violence, as in the case Brandenburg v. Ohio, that speech should be limited. Yeah, I do not believe that hate speech really should be limited because, as my partner said, limiting hate speech could lead to tyranny. I don't think that the ability to limit any speech we disagree with as unconstitutional. I just don't think that is constitutional, the ability to limit any speech that we don't agree with. And John Stuart Mill believed that society would not function properly if not everyone's ideas were heard.
Does freedom of expression contribute to good government? And explain your answer.
I believe freedom of expression does contribute to good government. It was believed by Thomas Jefferson that government has no right to infringe on our rights, and the First Amendment rights are sacred. And it was also believed by John Locke that government should do whatever it takes to keep its people safe. So I feel if it limits their freedom of expression, then it is likely to incite on their rights.
But how does that improve government? How does that help?
I believe that freedom of expression is a way that the people are able to communicate their ideas to the government, whether that be through protesting or just things said on social media. And some examples when the people have used freedom of expression to communicate ideas with their government have been the civil rights movement, the BLM movement, and the LGBTQ movement.
Does the fact that social media is the source of so much information and exclusive source for so many people mean that there needs to be much more control than ever was before with print media or television?
I believe that, yes, there really do need to be limits on social media, because right now the only limits on social media are those imposed by the social media companies themselves. And I believe this needs to change. And
You can finish your sentence.
And the UN has actually talked a lot about imposing guidelines on social media, calling for social media companies to align their speech codes with international human rights law, specifically Article 19 of the ICCPR. And some social media companies like Facebook and Twitter have expressed agreement.
Great, what a great job.
Thank you, team. Your judges are going to provide some feedback now.
Yeah, and we'll try and do it quickly. Rebecca, you want to start?
Sure, you all did an excellent job. We read this question and we thought, how in the world could middle school students answer this? It was just fabulous. Your opening remarks covered everything that it should, and you went into a lot of cases to help explain your response. Additionally, during the question and answer, you were able to apply some of the cases and cases that you hadn't mentioned in your 4-minute prepared remarks, such as Tinker and Ginsburg and a number of others. And you were able to incorporate all of that into your logical responses to our very difficult questions, and even got into some natural rights in your responses. I think you did an excellent job, and you and your teacher should be commended for such a great presentation.
I agree. Lindsay?
You touched on the major cases that I would have expected to hear. Need to start with that. I still wish we had more time, because I would like to talk to you about the Confederate statute piece. Liked your answer. Actually, just so I can hurry up and stop talking. What I was pleased with was that you talked about some of the global issues, but I also liked the fact you gave the example that was very specific on a man threatening to kill his ex-wife. There was some very big picture things and then some very small individual issues that you raised. So thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
That was a really beautiful job. Thank you. I thought you did a terrific job. And I especially appreciated at the end the discussion of the BLM movement and the UN. I know you just snuck it in there at the end, Sammy, but I really liked the UN references too. That was a much broader picture than just the United States, and it shows that you really are thinking about what's going on. And I just have to say, I'm really thrilled to think that you're going to be in charge of the government and the country when I'm sitting in my nursing home in my rocking chair, because you certainly know what you're talking about. And you probably already in middle school know more than 80% of the people in the country do. You probably would do as well as my law school class did on the question. So thank you. You did a superb job, and I'm just sorry we can't talk a little longer. Thank you.
Thank you, judges. Would you join me in applauding the team one more time? And then I'm going to
Especially
move
with
you.
all the technical issues, you did a really great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.